Your daughter has been paying your hospital bills for the past 6 years." The words hung in the air of my mother's hospital room. I watched her face shift from confusion to disbelief to something I had never seen before. Pure shock. She was sitting up in her bed, surrounded by my brother Terrence and his wife Priscilla. They had flown in from Chicago when they heard about her heart surgery. The whole family was there. Aunts, uncles, cousins, all the people who had spent years listening to my mother complain about me. The billing coordinator stood at the foot of the bed, holding a thick folder. She had no idea what she had just done. She thought she was simply thanking a generous daughter. "There must be some mistake," my mother said, her voice weak. "Tina doesn't have that kind of money." But there was no mistake. For 6 years, I had quietly paid every hospital bill, every specialist visit, every medication cost. Over $200,000. All while my mother told everyone who would listen that I was the family disappointment. I stood in the doorway, watching the scene unfold. My heart was pounding, but my face stayed calm. This was not how I planned for them to find out. But maybe it was exactly what needed to happen. My name is Tina Fletcher. I am 34 years old, and until 3 minutes ago, my family thought I was a failure. Growing up in our small town in Georgia, I was always the quiet one. My older brother Terrence was the star, football captain, straight-A student, full scholarship to Northwestern. He became a successful corporate lawyer in Chicago, married Priscilla, and gave my mother 2 perfect grandchildren. I was none of those things. I struggled in school, not because I wasn't smart, but because my brain worked differently. Numbers made sense to me in ways that words did not. While Terrence was winning debate competitions, I was in my room, teaching myself to code on an old computer I found at a garage sale. My mother never understood me. To her, success looked like Terrence. It looked like diplomas on walls and impressive job titles. It did not look like a teenage girl who would rather build websites than go to prom. "Why can't you be more like your brother?" she would ask. "Terrence never gave me this much trouble." I heard those words so many times that I started to believe them. Maybe I was the problem. Maybe I was the burden she always said I was. It took me years to learn the truth. I was never a burden. I was just different. The trouble started when I dropped out of college after 1 semester. I had enrolled at the local community college, mostly to make my mother happy. But I was miserable. The classes moved too slowly. I already knew more about computers than most of my professors. I was wasting time and money on something that wasn't teaching me anything. So I left. I got a job at a small tech repair shop downtown and started building my skills. Within a year, I had taught myself 3 programming languages and started freelancing on the side. But my mother only saw the dropout. She only saw the daughter who couldn't finish what she started. "You'll never amount to anything," she told me one Thanksgiving, right in front of the whole family. "Terrence has a law degree. What do you have? A part-time job fixing computers." I wanted to tell her about the freelance clients I was building, about the apps I was developing at night, about the money I was saving, but I had learned by then that she didn't want to hear it. She had already decided who I was. Nothing I said would change her mind. So I stopped trying to explain. I just kept working, quietly, patiently, building something nobody could see yet. When I was 26, I created an app that would change my life. It started as a simple project. I noticed that small businesses in our town struggled to manage their appointments and customer relationships. They were using paper calendars and sticky notes, so I built a simple scheduling tool. I called it Quick Slate. It was clean. It was easy. It solved a real problem. I offered it free to a few local businesses. A hair salon, a dental office, a small law firm. They loved it. They told their friends. Word spread. Within 6 months, I had over 500 businesses using Quick Slate. Within a year, I had investors calling. A tech company from Atlanta offered to buy my app for $2 million. I said no. I knew it was worth more. I kept building. I hired 2 developers. I moved into a small office above a pizza shop. I worked 18-hour days, surviving on coffee and determination. By the time I was 28, QuickSlate had over 50,000 users. The same company came back with a new offer, $8 million. I sold the company and walked away with more money than my mother would earn in 10 lifetimes. But I never told her. I never told any of them. Why didn't I tell my family about my success? It's a fair question, one I have asked myself many times. The simple answer is that I was tired. Tired of trying to prove myself. Tired of watching their eyes glaze over when I talked about my work. Tired of being compared to Terrence. I wanted them to see me for who I was, not for what I had. If they only respected me because of money, was that really respect at all? So I kept my life private. I moved to Atlanta and bought a small house. Nothing fancy. I drove a used Honda. I wore simple clothes. When I visited home for holidays, I looked exactly like the struggling daughter they expected to see. "Still fixing computers?" my mother would ask, not really caring about the answer. "Something like that," I would reply. I let them believe what they wanted. It was easier than fighting. And honestly, part of me wanted to see how long they would keep treating me like a disappointment. The answer was years. They kept it up for years. But everything changed when my mother got sick. The first heart attack happened when my mother was 61. Terrence called me from Chicago, his voice panicked. "Mom's in the hospital, it's bad." I drove through the night to get there. When I arrived, she was stable but weak. The doctor said she needed surgery, a bypass. It would be expensive. Terrence was already talking about payment plans and family contributions. "We all need to chip in," he said, looking at me with doubt. "Whatever you can manage, Simone." He meant $20, maybe 50. That's what he thought I could afford. I nodded and said nothing. That night, I went to the hospital's billing department. I asked them to send all bills directly to me. I gave them my bank information. I set up automatic payments. "Are you sure?" the woman behind the desk asked, looking at the estimated costs. "This could be over $50,000. "I'm sure," I said. "And please don't mention this to anyone. I want it to be private." She promised. For 6 years, she kept that promise. My mother had her surgery. She recovered, and every single bill went to me. The payments became a quiet ritual. Every month, I would receive statements. Hospital stays, specialist visits, medications, physical therapy, tests and scans, and follow-up appointments. My mother's heart was weak. Over the years, she needed more procedures, more care. The bills kept coming. And I kept paying, silently, without expecting anything in return. Meanwhile, my family continued to treat me like a charity case. At family gatherings, my mother would shake her head when my name came up. "Poor Tina, still struggling. I don't know where I went wrong with that one." My aunts would cluck their tongues in sympathy. My cousins would exchange knowing looks. Terrence would offer to lend me money, which I always politely refused. "Pride will be your downfall," my mother warned me once. "You can't even accept help from your own family." If only she knew. I didn't need help. I was the one helping them. But the irony was too heavy to carry sometimes. I would drive back to Atlanta after those visits and sit in my car for an hour, just breathing, processing the weight of their judgment. I told myself it didn't matter. I knew the truth. That was enough. The years passed, and my mother's health continued to decline. Her heart grew weaker. She had a second surgery when she was 64, then a third at 66. Each time, Terrence would organize family meetings about finances. Each time, I would sit quietly while they discussed payment plans. "The bills are already covered," the hospital would tell them. "Someone has been paying." My family was confused. They assumed it was insurance, or maybe a hospital charity program. They never thought to investigate further. Why would they? In their minds, none of us had that kind of money. Terrence was comfortable, but lawyers have bills of their own. And Tina, poor, struggling Tina, could barely afford rent. They believed what they wanted to believe. During this time, I started a new company, a bigger one. We built software for hospitals and medical offices. The irony was not lost on me. I was making millions from healthcare technology while secretly paying for my mother's healthcare. By the time I was 34, my net worth had crossed $20 million. I bought a nicer house. I donated to charities. I invested in other startups run by women who reminded me of my younger self. But to my family, I was still the disappointment, still the burden. Until that day in the hospital room. The day the truth came out started like any other visit. My mother was recovering from her latest procedure, a valve replacement this time. She was 67 now, and the surgeries were getting harder on her body. I drove down from Atlanta, expecting the usual routine. Sit by her bed, listen to her criticize my life choices, pretend it didn't hurt. But when I arrived, the room was already full. Terrence and Priscilla were there with their 2 teenagers. Several aunts and uncles had gathered, even some cousins I rarely saw. "What's going on?" I asked, surprised by the crowd. "Mom wanted the family together," Terrence explained. "She has something to say." My mother was sitting up in bed, looking frail but determined. "I've been thinking about things," she began. "About family, about legacy. I want to make sure everyone knows how grateful I am." She started thanking people. Terrence for being a successful son, Priscilla for being a wonderful wife, various relatives for their support over the years. Then she looked at me. "And Simone," she said, her voice turning cooler, "I suppose you tried your best." That was it. That was my acknowledgement. I stood there, my face burning but my expression neutral. After 34 years, I had learned to hide my feelings. My mother's dismissal washed over me like cold water. Familiar, expected, still painful. Then the door opened. A woman in professional attire walked in, carrying a folder. She smiled warmly at my mother. "Mrs. Fletcher, I'm Denise from the billing department. I just wanted to personally thank you and your family before your discharge tomorrow." My mother looked confused. "Thank us for what?" "For your daughter's generosity, of course." Denise beamed at me. 6 years of payments, over $200,000. We don't see that kind of family dedication very often. It's truly beautiful. The room went completely silent. My mother's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Terrence stared at me as if seeing me for the first time. "What is she talking about?" my mother finally managed. Denise looked between us, suddenly realizing something was wrong. "I'm sorry," I thought. "Your daughter Tina has been paying all your medical bills since your first surgery. We have it all documented." Denise seemed to understand she had stumbled into something private. Her smile faded. "I apologize if I've spoken out of turn," she said carefully. "I assumed everyone knew." She placed the folder on the bedside table. "The complete payment history is here if anyone wants to review it." Then she quietly left the room. The silence that followed was deafening. I could feel every eye on me. My aunts, my uncles, my cousins, all the people who had spent years pitying poor, struggling Tina. My mother's face had gone pale. $200,000, she whispered. "That's not possible. You don't have that kind of money." I took a deep breath. "Actually, I do." "How?" Terrence demanded. He sounded almost angry. "How is that possible?" "I built a company," I said simply. "Several, actually. I sold my first one 8 years ago for $8 million. My current company is worth considerably more." The room erupted, everyone talking at once, questions flying, accusations forming. But I just stood there calmly, watching it all unfold. This was the moment I had imagined for years, the moment when they finally saw the truth. It felt nothing like I expected. My mother found her voice first. "You've been lying to us," she said, and I was stunned to hear anger in her tone. Not gratitude, anger. "All these years letting us think you were struggling, making fools of us." "Making fools of you," I repeated, disbelief creeping into my voice. "I paid your medical bills, I kept you alive, and you're angry that I didn't announce it." "You should have told us," Terrence said, his lawyer voice emerging. "Family doesn't keep secrets like this." "Family doesn't call each other burdens either," I replied quietly. But that never stopped Mom. My mother flinched. For a brief moment, I saw something flicker across her face. Shame, maybe, or recognition, but it disappeared quickly, replaced by defiance. "I never called you a burden," she said. "You've called me a burden my entire life." My voice stayed steady. At Thanksgiving dinners, at family reunions, on phone calls I wasn't supposed to hear. "Simone is such a burden. Why can't she be more like Terrence?" "That's not fair," Priscilla interjected. "She was just worried about you." Worried? I almost laughed. She wasn't worried. She was embarrassed. There's a difference. The room had split into factions. Some relatives were looking at me with new respect. Others seemed uncomfortable, caught between old loyalties and new information. Terrence stood by my mother's bed, protective and confused. "Why didn't you just tell us about your success?" he asked. "None of this drama was necessary." "Would you have believed me?" I asked. "If I had come home and said I was a millionaire, what would you have said?" He opened his mouth to respond, then closed it. "Exactly," I said. "You would have accused me of lying, or exaggerating, or you would have found some way to minimize it. That's nice, Simone, but it's not a real career like Terrence's law degree." My Aunt Patricia nodded slowly. "She has a point, Terrence. Your mother was always comparing." "Don't turn this around on me," my mother snapped. "I'm the one in the hospital bed. I'm the one who almost died. And now I find out my own daughter has been hiding her whole life from me." "I wasn't hiding," I said. "I was protecting myself. Every time I tried to share something I was proud of, you dismissed it. Every time I accomplished something, you found a way to make it smaller, so I stopped sharing." My mother's eyes filled with tears, real tears. For a moment, I felt the familiar urge to comfort her, to apologize, to make everything okay. That instinct had been trained into me since childhood. Protect Mom's feelings. Don't make waves, keep the peace. But I was tired of keeping the peace at my own expense. "I paid your bills because you're my mother," I said, my voice softer now. "Despite everything, I love you. I didn't want you to suffer because of money. I didn't want you to worry." "Then why hide it?" she asked. "Why let me go on thinking you were struggling?" "Because I wanted to see if you could love me without knowing about the money," I admitted. The truth hurt to say out loud. "I wanted to see if you could be proud of me just for being me, not for what I had achieved, just for who I was." The room was silent. "And the answer," I continued, my voice cracking slightly, "was no. Right up until 5 minutes ago, you told this whole room that I tried my best. That was the most you could say about me. Your daughter who paid for your life, she tried her best." My mother looked away. She couldn't meet my eyes. Terrence stepped forward, his expression complicated. "Tina, I didn't know." "Of course you didn't," I said. "You never asked. Neither of you did. Not once in all these years did anyone ask what I was actually doing with my life. You all just assumed." "We assumed because you never corrected us," Priscilla said, still defending her husband. "I shouldn't have had to," I replied. "That's the point. You should have been curious. You should have cared enough to ask." I walked over to the folder Denise had left behind. I opened it, revealing page after page of payment records. Dates, amounts, my name printed at the top of every single page. 6 years, I said, placing the folder on my mother's lap. 53 payments, $217,000, every surgery, every medication, every scan, all paid, by the daughter you called a burden. My mother stared at the papers, her hands trembling. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "You don't have to say anything," I replied. "I didn't do it for thanks. I did it because it was the right thing to do." I stayed at the hospital for another hour. The atmosphere had shifted. People spoke in hushed tones. Some relatives approached me with awkward congratulations. Others seemed unsure how to act around me now that the power dynamic had changed. My cousin Lawrence, who had always been kind to me, pulled me aside. "I always knew you were special," he said. "Even when everyone else doubted you, I'm proud of you, Simone." His words meant more than he knew. Eventually, the room emptied. Visiting hours were ending. Only Terrence, Priscilla, and I remained with my mother. "Can we talk?" Terrence asked. "Just the two of us." We stepped into the hallway. Through the window, I could see the Atlanta skyline in the distance. My city, my home, the place where I had built everything. "I owe you an apology," Terrence said. "I should have defended you more. Growing up, I knew Mom was hard on you. I should have said something." "You were the golden child," I said without bitterness. "It wasn't your job to fix her." "Maybe not, but you're my sister. I should have tried." We talked for a long time in that hallway. Terrence told me about his own struggles, the pressure of being the perfect son, the exhausting weight of everyone's expectations, the marriage problems he and Priscilla were secretly having. "I'm not as put together as everyone thinks," he admitted. "I've just gotten better at hiding it." "I guess we're more alike than anyone realized," I said. He smiled sadly. "I guess so." When we returned to the room, my mother was alone. Priscilla had stepped out to check on the kids. The room felt smaller now, more intimate. "Tina," my mother said. Her voice was different, smaller, more vulnerable than I had ever heard it. "Yes, Mom." "I don't deserve what you did for me." A tear rolled down her cheek. "I know that. I've spent so many years comparing you to your brother, I never stopped to see you, really see you." I sat down beside her bed. "Why?" I asked. "Why was I never good enough?" She was quiet for a long moment. "Because you reminded me of myself," she finally said. "The version of me that never got a chance, the dreams I gave up." I stared at my mother, confused. "What do you mean?" I asked. She sighed, looking older than her 67 years. "When I was young, I wanted to be an artist. I was good at it too, but my mother told me it wasn't practical. She said I needed to focus on finding a husband, building a family, being responsible." I had never heard this story. "So I gave up my art," she continued. "I did everything I was supposed to do, and then I had you. This quiet, creative child who didn't care what anyone thought, who spent hours on her computer, building things I couldn't understand." "You resented me for that?" I asked softly. "I resented myself," she admitted. "You had the courage I never did, and instead of being proud, I tried to push you toward the safe path, the path I took. Because if you succeeded by being different, what did that say about my choices?" The pieces were falling into place. Years of criticism, years of comparison. It was never really about me at all. "Mom," I said gently, "it's not too late for either of us." The days that followed were strange and unfamiliar. My mother was discharged from the hospital. Terrence and Priscilla extended their stay. For the first time in years, we spent time together as a real family. There were more conversations, more truths unearthed, more apologies exchanged. It wasn't easy. Years of pain couldn't be erased in a few days, but we were trying. I took my mother to my house in Atlanta. She walked through the rooms slowly, taking everything in. "You built all this," she said, standing in my home office, looking at the awards on my shelf. "My daughter built all this." "I did," I confirmed. "And I almost missed it." She turned to face me, her eyes wet. "I almost spent my whole life missing who you really were." "But you didn't," I said. "We still have time." She reached out and took my hand. Her grip was weak but warm. "I'm proud of you, Tina. I should have said it years ago. I should have said it every day. But I'm saying it now. I'm so incredibly proud of you." 6 months after the hospital revelation, things had changed. My mother and I spoke on the phone every week. Real conversations. Not the awkward small talk of before, but genuine discussions about our lives, our hopes, our fears. She had even started painting again. Small watercolors that she sent me photos of. They weren't masterpieces, but they were hers, and she was proud of them. "Your grandmother was wrong," she told me one day. "About art not being practical, about dreams not mattering. I was wrong to believe her, and I was wrong to pass that fear on to you." Terrence and I grew closer too. He visited Atlanta more often. We discovered shared interests. He started asking my advice about investments. I started asking his advice about legal matters for my company. The family dynamic had shifted permanently. At gatherings, I was no longer the disappointment. I was just Simone, Successful but still humble, wealthy but not boastful, different but finally appreciated. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. Some relatives still felt awkward around me, old wounds still surfaced sometimes, but we were healing. Slowly and imperfectly, we were healing. A year after the truth came out, I made a decision. I created a foundation in my mother's name. The Alina Fletcher Foundation would provide grants to young women pursuing careers in technology and art, fields that society often dismissed, dreams that families sometimes crushed. The announcement happened at a small ceremony in our hometown. My mother sat in the front row, looking healthier than she had in years. "This foundation exists because of my mother," I said from the podium. Not because she was perfect, but because her imperfections taught me something important. Our families don't always understand our dreams, but that doesn't mean we stop dreaming. I looked at her directly. "Mom, you spent years not seeing me, but in the end you chose to look. You chose to change. That took courage, the same courage you never thought you had." She was crying, but this time they were tears of joy. "This foundation will help young women whose families don't understand them yet," I continued. "It will tell them what I wished someone had told me. Your dreams matter. Your path is valid. And one day, the people who doubt you might become your biggest supporters." After the ceremony, my mother pulled me aside. "I don't deserve this honor," she said, gesturing at the banner with her name on it. "Maybe not," I admitted, "but that's kind of the point. This foundation isn't about rewarding perfect parents. It's about showing that change is possible. That understanding can come late but still come." She nodded slowly. "I wasted so many years." "We both did," I said. "I wasted years hiding, years being bitter, years waiting for approval that never came. But we can't get that time back. We can only decide what to do with the time we have left." She hugged me. It was the kind of hug I had wanted my whole life, tight and full and unconditional. "I love you, Simone," she whispered. "Not because of your money, not because of your success, just because you're you, my brilliant, stubborn, wonderful daughter." For the first time in 35 years, I believed her. "I love you too, Mom." The foundation grew quickly. Within 2 years, we had funded over 50 grants. Young women pursuing computer science degrees, artists whose families wanted them to be accountants, dreamers who needed someone to believe in them. I read every application personally. So many stories echoed my own, daughters called burdens, sisters overlooked for brothers, talented women told their gifts weren't practical. One applicant wrote something that stayed with me. "My mother said I was wasting my life on silly hobbies. She doesn't know I sold my first app last month. I haven't told her because I don't know if she'll ever truly see me." I funded her immediately. Then I wrote her a personal note. "Tell her anyway," I wrote. Not for her approval, but because secrets become walls. I hid my success for years, protecting myself from rejection. But in the end, the walls hurt more than the rejection ever could. Give your mother a chance to surprise you, and if she doesn't, at least you'll know you tried. She wrote back a month later. Her mother had cried, then apologized, then asked to see the app. Not every story ended that way, but enough did to give me hope. My mother passed away, peacefully, 2 years after the hospital revelation. Her heart finally gave out, despite everything we had done to save it. But those final 2 years were different from all the years that came before. We had traveled together. We had laughed together. We had been honest with each other in ways we never could before. At her funeral, I gave the eulogy. "My mother was not a perfect woman," I said, looking out at the crowd. "For most of my life, I felt invisible to her. I felt like a burden, a disappointment, the daughter who could never measure up." I paused, gathering my thoughts. But in her final years, she changed. She looked at me, really looked at me for the first time, and I learned something important. People can change. Understanding can come late. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past, but it can transform the future. I smiled through my tears. My mother taught me that it's never too late to see someone clearly, and it's never too late to say the words that matter. "I love you, Mom. Thank you for finally seeing me." It has been 5 years since my mother passed. I still run my company. I still fund the foundation. I still help young women whose families don't understand their dreams. But something fundamental has changed in me. I no longer carry the weight of being unseen. I no longer hide my success or my struggles. I live openly, authentically, without apology. Sometimes people ask me about the hospital bills, about the $200,000 I spent on a woman who called me a burden. They want to know if it was worth it. I tell them the same thing every time. The money was never the point. The money was just a tool. What I really paid for was time. Time with my mother. Time for her to change. Time for me to forgive. And in the end, that time was priceless. My mother never stopped being complicated. Our relationship never became simple, but it became real, and that was enough. She saw me before she died. She was proud of me before she died, and I had the privilege of seeing her become the mother she always could have been. That's the ending I never expected. Not revenge, not vindication. Just love, arriving late but arriving nonetheless.